Hello, I'm Mikael Hellström. I'm a PhD candidate in political science at the University of Alberta. And together with my colleague Patrick, I recently co-authored a paper, The Administration of Multiculturalism, the Role of Immigrant Community Organizations on the Labour Market Policy Field in Canada, Germany and Sweden, where we compared these three countries from essentially the post-war era until now. Uh, the reason that we did this paper is that in the public debate, you hear essentially two different positions when it comes to the issues of immigrant integration. On the left, you often hear people saying that we effectively need more welfare state. On the right, you hear uh, people talking about more privatization. Sometimes when you have dramatic events like, for instance, the um, recent unrest in the suburb of Stockholm, Sweden, and Husby, um, uh, you will hear people talking about the need for more police, and that's essentially the two classic positions in the debate. The thing is, if you compare these countries, you would think that Germany and Sweden, they have a bigger welfare state. That's what many people expect. Bigger welfare state has more social services, and so there should be better integration. But if we compare these three countries, where Germany and Sweden do have a bigger welfare state, both of them, than Canada, we actually find that in terms of all the outcomes, labor market participation, unemployment rates, income levels, and so on, Canadian integration actually consistently score better than what happens in Germany and Sweden. So why is that? That's effectively what we're thinking about when we're writing this paper. And what we find here is that it's not about the size of the public sector, it's about the organization of the public sector. Who is making the decisions? Who is delivering the services? And one key player in this is immigrant community actors. What do we mean by this? Well, that's non-government organizations, voluntary associations, mutual aid societies that are created by the immigrants themselves in the neighborhoods where they reside. And what they do is that they are really significant for integration because they have a lot of cultural capital. So because they are created in these neighborhoods, they are informed by the experiences by the people who live there. They are informed by the experiences that these people have had of migration. They are connected to the community in that way. They can very quickly uh, identify local needs and provide very important bottom-up expertise. In other words, they lived the experience of settling in the new country. So these organizations, these actors, know very well what other newcomers will need entering the new country. And what we find is that these kind of community actors, they are present in Canada, but they're absent in Germany and Sweden. And that's really a significant difference because if they're absent, then this type of expertise can't be leveraged properly in policy making and policy action. And their presence, we also find that the presence of these actors on this arena, and by the arena we talk about service delivery, we talk about policy making, and that depends on organizational structure and organizational culture of the public sector. That's that's what's key here, and this is really a matter of top-down versus bottom-up management. It's really about, and let's elaborate on that. So when it comes to the public sector and how it's organized, we can really talk about different styles of governance and how that relates to immigrant agency, which is another way of saying, are immigrant community actors on the arena? Are they playing a role? Are they taking part in what's going on? So what we have here is a simple graph where we have two axes. One is organization and one is rules. Organization here means how centralized is an organization? Is the public sector? Uh, how in a formal sense, how strongly formally organized is it? The other axis here is about rules, which is exactly what it sounds like. How much is the activities taking place in the public sector? How much are those activities regulated by rules? And then we get four different styles of management, four different styles of governance. So let's go through those. And we'll start in the top segment here. So this is then strongly regulated by rules, and we'll find two styles of governance. First, the fatalist way, and then the hierarchist way. The fatalist way is really management by mistrust. If you organize your public sector according to this standard, you won't have maybe the highest level of centralization, but you'll have very strongly uh, management by rulemaking. And this is a style of governance, that an organizational style that is based on mistrust, because it's an excellent way of organizing things if you want to catch cheaters. The value that informs this way is that you're assuming that people will be cheating the system, people will be free riders, and you don't trust them. And this way of doing things is really good at catching cheaters. So you'll find this way of doing things for instance, in law enforcement. A good example is in traffic control, where you have breathalyzer tests, random breathalyzer tests, because you're expecting people to maybe not all the time respect that you shouldn't drink and drive. And that's not a poor tool to use in that condition. But in this condition, when it comes to integration, it might not be the best advised, and I'll get back to that in a moment. A second way here is the hierarchist way. As you can see, it's more centralized because it's higher on the organizational scale. And this is really what most people think about when they think about more public sector. They think about this management by pyramid. It's very regimented. You have the minister on top. You have ranks of civil servant going all the way down to the frontline clerks. And it's an excellent way of organizing things when you want to have effective decision making, because everybody within this organization knows what are their responsibilities, what are their rights, and who's making the decisions, which of course is the boss, the person at the top of the pyramid. So it's very regimented in that way. Thing is, what unites these two is that they're both top-down ways of doing management, and because of that, they obstruct community actors. And this has to do with how the perspective within the organization works. In this fatalist way, you just don't trust the community actors. You would consider them cheats, and they will be seen as special interests that skew the policy process, and in fact may even be seen as a danger to the democratic process in some ways. In the hierarchist way, you're also not going to be receptive to what goes on in the communities, because in the hierarchist way, expertise is at the top of the pyramid. It's the highest level of decision making. So the users and their experiences and their knowledge in either of these is simply going to be discounted. And that's what's going on in Sweden and Germany. In these two countries, these two styles of governance are really quite strong, which means that community actors are not involved in policy making. They're not involved in delivering social services to their own neighborhoods. If we go down here to these two styles, they are less rule bound. So less low on the rule bound section. So these are two other ways of doing governance, the individualist way and the egalitarian way. This one is management by competition, based essentially on the ideas of the market. The idea is that users, those who use the social services, can pick their own service delivery agency, and if they don't like a certain agency doing social services, then they'll go to someone else, like in a market. In this way, and this is not based on competition. The egalitarian way is not based on competition. It's more based on collaboration. the basic ethos, the basic values in the egalitarian way is to remove the difference between the producer and the user. So effectively, you have the user being the producer as well. And this is, as you can see, it's under the uh, high organization axes in the high organization part of the chart. And that means that it's more coherent, it's more cohesive. Uh, the difference between these two is that this individualist way is better to use in a community that's fragmented and that doesn't quite get where different actors might not be getting along that well with each other. Whereas this one is very much based on consensus making. It's based on a community where there is a lot of consensus, where people generally agree on the way of doing things. But what they have in common is that they're both bottom-up styles of doing governance, of organizing the public sector. Because they are bottom-up ways of doing things, because they place power at the hands of the users in different ways, they facilitate community actor, both of them. Uh, so in both cases, you will actually have space. In both cases, you will actually say that the expert is the user. The expert is the one who actually has a stake in uh, succeeding with, uh, in this case, getting into the labor market. So in this case, succeeding with integration, which is, of course, the immigrants themselves. So in this case, you effectively say to the immigrants maybe that, you want to learn the language, or you want to get into a particular profession. Well, you can choose whatever agency you think will work best for you and go there. And in this case, uh, you have the community coming together and agreeing that and drawing upon each other's expertise, and together they can identify the needs that have to be met, and how to best bridge newcomers into the new host society. And that's what's actually going on in Canada. In this country, it's much more bottom up. It's much more a situation where the communities are considered the experts on this process. And that's the key difference between these three countries. I'll just say that this is a bit of a simplification. There's a bit more complexity going on to the dynamics of each country and how each country has changed over time. But overall, this is the key difference between these three cases. Sweden and Germany have much more top-down management. Canada has much more bottom-up management, where the key actor in creating bridging for newcomers is really the community actors, the immigrant organizations that come together and do this for their own members. And what can we take away from this? Well, we have to, when discussing things like this, like integration, we have to think about the organization of the service delivery. Who is doing what? Why are they doing it? Who's making the decisions? Who has the power? Immigrant involvement really depends on organizational culture of the public sector, and depends on all of these. If the top echelon of a pyramid is making all the decisions, then you're not going to have a lot of flexibility to listen to the community and absorb those signals into policy making or service delivery, and that makes service delivery less flexible, and it means that you effectively disempower the people that for whom you're supposedly designing the services. And that also means that what we can take away from this is that governance style does matter for integration, and that these two styles that we talked about, the fatalist way and the hierarchist way, that top-down management keeps immigrant community actors out. When it does so, the expertise, the experiences, and local needs, all of this is excluded from decision making. All of this is none of this is taking into account when social services are designed, which is going to make it much harder, because if you don't know what the user need, you're not going to be able to deliver highly qualitative services. And so in effect, if you want to be successful with something like immigrant integration, you have to listen to the users, and you have to give the organizations that represent the users a key position at the table. This happens in Canada. It doesn't really happen in Sweden or Germany. And that's a key difference that is often overlooked in the public debate. And I will be continuing to dissect and dig into this in my thesis that is forthcoming in the next year. Thank you very much for listening.